Alrightio. Hello, my squeaky cleans. How you doing? Hope you're doing really good. So, now I know many of you have been watching this for many years. This channel, and I appreciate it very much. I see the same funny, beautiful faces, the same names, usernames, and thank you very much. I know you appreciate it. I hope some newcomers appreciate it. Usually I'm seeing they don't because the channel doesn't really grow much, but that's okay. That's fine because we're just telling the truth. We're not here to win any popularity contests. So let's talk about Rome's unknown Jewish-Phoenician monarchic history because this is really interesting. So, basically, I'm reading the Kebra Nagast, which is the Ethiopian Bible, and it talks about early interactions between Rome and Solomon, and we'll get to that soon. And basically, there was a Jewish dynasty ruling Rome, apparently. And Solomon, due to his wisdom, let's cut the baby in half, things like this relates him to the trickster god Min, and we see that in his name, that he's a bit of a god. He's not just a king. And maybe that's why we can't identify him, because the kings the kings called Solomon, such as the Shalmanesers, such as the Hebrew Solomon, are actually named after a god. And so we have to separate what they did from what the god was reputed to have done on earth. So the Ethiopian church records kings of Rome with Shem blood. It records interactions between Solomon and Rome, and Roman kings with Semitic names. In particular, it mentions Baltazar and Adrami as kings of Rome. The Ethiopian church suggests Rome was founded by Europeans but taken over by Semites. The story is set in Constantinople times, but then the interactions are between Rome and King Solomon, hence mixed up with possible losses of Heraclius in the 600s to Islam, and the stories have been mixed up. And I see that a lot in ancient history. And what about other links between the Phoenician Jewish world and the world of Rome? We have discussed Roman ritual bathing, once sacred to the Jewish religion. Baptism, it's literally named after babies, babying. And this is what, and we actually expect, I expect to find strong Phoenician links with early Rome due to the worship of the god Jupiter, which is clearly could be something like Eob Atlas, Eob water, or I think more likely Ea, Boda, which is basically Ea, the moon god from Egypt, as we've just found some from Moses' god from Egyptian sources in a previous video, and Buddha. And the seven sacred hills, both hills are both sacred to the moon, as we've found, because moon, the name mountain is named after the damn moon. Moses goes to the moon 40, the moon's number is 40, it goes on and on and on. But mountains are also sacred to Bud because mountains represented the earth, and mountains represented the pyramids, and pyramids represented the earth, circular mounds represented the earth. It'll be in an upcoming book that I keep promising but never deliver. And we know that later Stoicism and Neoplatonism had to come from somewhere, and everyone, even the mainstreamers say that it's similar to Buddhism. And we've discovered on this channel that Roman pyramid, despite so-called being produced by a Roman bloke in classical times, points to the day of Fortuna, I believe. It was pointing to luck. It was for good luck, which is why the pyramids were built. Roman pyramids is also similar with their sharp edges, sharp angles, similar to the Sudanese pyramids. And we see a great Phoenician empire that is completely lost in ancient times. The French and Dutch accents, whether we want to talk about it or not, that people don't want to talk about, are Hebrew-like. Odyssey, as people describe, is Atlantic. It's basically Atlantic literature. When you have the low sun, you have the wine dark sea. And what I've done here, I've plugged in some Semitic names into what we consider to be European authors, because we have to account for the spread of the Phoenician alphabet. So, is Ovid Haddad telling stories about ancient mythology? Is Homer Omar? Is Hesiod something like Eshau? Is Aesop Joseph? And these names are so darn similar to the Greco-Roman names for these authors that we have to wonder, is this Phoenician literature which has simply become absorbed by the Greco-Romans, and therefore this is the way they wrote these names. And when you look up people like Homer, we don't know where he lived, who he was. And this is the same for many of these authors. How did alphabet spread? By sharing it around, or by empire? In looking at alphabets through history, I see that they're always spread through empire. They're never spread by like, oh, here's a good idea, let's use this. It's always spread by rule and empire. That's why we're using the Roman alphabet, because we're not using the Greek alphabet, because the Romans conquered the Greeks. We're not using the Hebrew alphabet because the Romans conquered the Carthaginians. And so it goes on. We're speaking English on different sides of the planet because the British Empire took over all the other European empires except for maybe the French Empire. Absolutely fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Let's get into it because you love it. Unbelievable. Come on. All right, we did it. We did it. And we've shown in a previous video that there is a massive mystery regarding Rome and cities nearby which are named after Hindu deities. And we know at least 3 ancient authors have said that Jewish peoples literally come from India. So what is going on here? We see basically Rama with a longbow, a composite Asian longbow. He's blue, the same as the fellow from Egypt, which is basically either whatever you want to call him, Osiris. We've found this is the Russian blue Santa Claus in earlier videos, if you recall, or whatever you want to call him, the resurrection god. Just fascinating. Also the green man, just amazing. Also clearly a warrior in this representation. And if you haven't read it, I encourage you to read the Aeneid. Very interesting book indeed. And it's got a lot of the Roman religion in there. And Catholics will recognise a lot of it, but without the Jesus. So it's actually quite fascinating. So if you haven't read it, I urge you to read some of Virgil. And there were actually different Virgils. There was this Virgil, and then there was another. There was like a Pope Virgilius who wrote books on alchemy. Look, if you want to be an academic, life isn't long enough to even begin to read some of the ancient books and go down all the rabbit holes. It's just fascinating stuff. But anyway, the reason I bring this up, and they're very interesting, is that Aeneas, he migrated away from Troy at the same time as Dido was founding Carthage. So what you're telling me is Aeneas was definitely Trojan, and Dido was definitely Carthaginian, Lebanese, Hebrew, Proto-Hebrew, sorry, not the same thing, clearly. In fact, the Carthaginian version of the Proto-Hebrew religion might be almost unrecognizable to modern Judaism. But what you're trying to tell me historically is that this bloke migrated to Italy, and it actually says in the Aeneid that he went to the other side of Italy to get away from the Greeks. He didn't want to be on the near side of Italy to Troy, so hence Rome where it is. It was obviously some kind of sacred centre dedicated to the Rama god, founded by God knows who, and he settled there and he mixed with the Latin people who were also possibly from Turkey as well. Anyway, you're telling me that this is a separate migration to Dido's migration from Tyria to found Carthage when it happened at the same time, and therefore he cannot be a Phoenician. How do we know he's not a Phoenician? How do we not know he's not a member of Dido's company? Because in the Roman legends, Dido was madly in love with him, and I believe she killed herself because he wasn't interested, and he said he was he founded Roman masculine virtue. His philosophy, overriding philosophy, was men first. So he just took his father and son and he left all the women behind, apparently. And due to this man first religion that he had, this steered the destiny of Rome ever since that time. And so he even left Dido in Carthage. He went there with her possibly, or stopped there at the same time as she was founding the city. Clearly a link to the Phoenicians. Let's continue. So when we look at Solomon, is he the Hebrew version? Well, not really. Is he Shalmaneser? The Shalmanesers? Well, not really. 5 kings in Iraq who are named after this bloke. Shalmanu is supposedly the friendly one. Assyrian, a friendly manifestation of the Assyrian national deity Ashur. But you can quite clearly say that you got Sol and you've got Manu. Manu being the first man in ancient India, because the first man was created by Manu the moon, which is Min, and he's also clearly got some Min in him, and that's why he's a trickster. And you can see he's literally one of the trickster gods. So there was once a book about the sayings of the trickster god somehow. And, cut the baby in half. This is something that the cosmic fall would suggest. This is the trickster god's wisdom. Just unbelievable. Right, so Min, of course. Trickster gods. Loki. Maui. Monkeys are named after the moon. And, look, there's a lot of them. There's quite a few. Coyote. Set. Toph is another one. Knowledge and alphabets and tricksters and it just goes on and on and on. Loki, luck. So Shalmanu, they're saying Shalmanu is actually a god. Shalmanu was a god that was worshipped by ancient Assyrians, which is where Abraham comes from. Before he went to Egypt, possibly taking Ea with him, it became Aya for Moses, and it became Iyawa for the Israelites. Just absolutely fascinating. We can go on and look at the Shalmaneseres, but it's clear the Shalmaneseres are named after an earlier Solomon, so it's not them either. So this is the moment you've been waiting for. This is from the Kebra Nagast, the Ethiopian Bible. So let's go. And we will begin to tell you what we have heard and what we have found written, and what we have seen concerning the king of Rome. The kingdom of Rome was the portion and dominion of Japheth, the son of Noah. And sitting down, they made 12 great cities, and Darius built the greatest city. And this is a really mixed up story, so be prepared for that it's a collection of traditions bundled together, okay? So Darius, we know, was a king of the Persians. So Antiochia, Tyre, so it's linking Rome to Tyria. Bartonia, Ramia. And those who reigned dwelt there, and King Constantine built Constantinople after his own name, now the sign of the cross having appeared to him during the battle in the form of stars cut in the heavens. He was delivered out of the hands of his enemy, and from that time onwards the kings of Rome made their habitation there. And that Darius had many descendants, and from Darius to the days of Solomon were 18 generations. And of his seed were born a man whose name was Zanbaris, and he made in wisdom a drawing of the astrolabe and placed stars therein, and he also made a balance for the sun. And he foresaw what would come after, that the kingdom would not remain to the children of Japhet, but would depart to the seed of David of the tribe of Shem. And when he thus saw, he sent a message to David the king, saying, so we're looking at 1000 BC, 900 BC, or 1200 BC, take my daughter for thy son. And David the king took her and gave her. So we have a king, or possibly of Rome, called Zanbaris. Okay, Zanbaris. And this isn't, I've never heard of this in any Livy or Ovid or any of the Roman mythologies. This is possibly pre-Aeneas. Maybe pre-Romulus and Remus, who knows, Zanbaris. Anyway, let's continue. Take my daughter for thy son. And David the king took her and gave her to Solomon his son, and Solomon began a son by her and called his name Adrami. Zanbaris died before this, and Baltazar, who was of his kinsmen, became king. And he lacked male offspring to reign after him upon his throne, and he was jealous lest the children of his father should reign after him. And he sent a written message to Solomon, saying, Hail to the greatness of thy kingdom and thine honourable wisdom. And now give me my son, and I will make him king over the city of Rome. For I have not been able to beget male children, but only 3 daughters, and I will give him whatever of my daughters he pleaseth, and I will give him my throne, and he shall be king, and his seed after him in the city of Rome forever. And when King Solomon had read this letter, he meditated, saying, If I keep back my son, he will send to the king of the east, who will give him his son, and that which I have planned will be made void. Therefore I will give him my son. And he took counsel with his counselors of the house of Israel, and he said to them, We have already given our son and our children to the country of Ethiopia, and Israel hath a kingdom there. And now, so that we may have a third kingdom, the country of Rome, I will send thither Adramis, my youngest son. So it's saying here, Rome is going to be part of the empire of what the Ethiopians consider to be Israel, but it could be an ancient memory of the Phoenicians. Hold it not against me as for evil thing that I formerly took away your sons, for it is pleasing thing to God that the men of Ethiopia have learned his name and have become his people. In like manner, the men of Rome, if we give them our children, will become people of God, and unto us moreover shall be given the name of people of God, being spoken of thus and called. And thus the people of Israel have taken the kingdom of Ethiopia and the kingdom of Rome. Give ye your youngest sons as before, and let those of middle age stay in our city. And they rose up and took counsel, and returned and said unto him, We will speak this matter unto the king, and shall do his will. And he said unto them, Make me hear what ye would say. And they said unto him, Thou hast already taken the eldest of our houses, and now take the youngest of their children. And he was pleased with this counsel, and he did for them as they wished. And they set forward Adrami his son, who took some of the nobles of the lower grades of the house of Israel. And the lot fell upon him in the name of his father Solomon, and they gave him a priest of the tribe of the Levites, whose name was Achimichel. And they set Adrami upon the king's mule, and cried out to him, Hail, long live the royal father. And all the people said, It is right and proper. And they anointed him with the oil of kingship, and commanded him to keep all the laws of... Well, they did the same to Jesus, didn't they? Maybe that's something in the Bible there. And they made him swear that he would worship no other god except for the God of Israel. Is that Jupiter? Because the name is so similar. Or Moon Buddha. And they blessed him as they had blessed David his brother, and admonished Adrami even as they had admonished David, and they accompanied him as on his way as far as the sea coast. And Solomon the king wrote and sent a letter saying, Peace be to Balthazar, the king of Rome. Take my son... So there's already a bloke in Rome with a name very similar to... already a Phoenician name. So they're already Phoenicians in Rome. And they're saying, send us another one, Take my son, Adrami, give him thy daughter, make him king of the city of Rome. Thou didst wish for a king of the seed of David, my father, and I have done thy will. And I have sent unto thee his nobles, 14 on his right hand, 14 on his left, who shall keep the law with him, and subject him unto thee according to thy will. And they arrived there with the ambassadors of the king of Rome, together with much splendour and all the equipment that was requisite for the country of Rome. And they came to the city of Rome, to Balthazar the king, and they repeated all that Solomon had sent them to say, and delivered him over to his son. And Balthazar rejoiced exceedingly, and gave him the eldest daughter, whose name was Adlonia. Adlonia sounds almost Russian. And he made a great marriage feast according to the greatness of his kingdom, and established him over all his city of Rome. And he blessed him, for he was noble in stature, and his wisdom was marvellous, and he was exceedingly mighty in his strength. One day Balthazar wished to and look, this goes on and on and on. So there's some Solomonic wisdom here. I have seized his sheep, they are in my house. What decision will you come to in respect of me? And the owner of the sheep came to the king and made an appeal to him, saying, Give me back my sheep, for he have carried them off because they went into his vineyard. And the king said unto him, Go ye and argue your case before your king Adrami, and whatsoever he shall say unto you, that do. And he went and argued the case before him, and Adrami asked him how much of the vineyard have the sheep eaten, the leaves, or the tendrils, or the young grapes, or the roots, or the shoots by the roots. And the owner of the vineyard answered and said unto him, They have eaten the tendrils and the branches that had grapes upon them, and there is nothing left of the vines except the twigs by the root. And Adrami asked the owner of the sheep, saying, Is this true? And the owner of the sheep answered and said to him, My lord, they ate only the tendrils with leaves on them. And Adrami answered and said, This man saith that they ate the grapes, is that true? And the owner of the sheep answered and said, No, my lord, but they ate the blossoms before they had formed into grapes. Ugh. And Adrami said unto them, Hearken ye to the judgment which I declare unto you. For if the sheep have destroyed all the shoots from the roots of the vine, they all belong to thee. And if they have eaten the leaves of the branches and the blossoms of the grapes, take the sheep, shear their wool, and take also the young of those which have not yet brought forth. But the sheep which they have already brought forth young for the first time, leave to the owner of the sheep. And all those who heard the judgment which he pronounced marvelled. And Balthazar said, Verily this judgment is a judgment of the people of the God of Israel. Henceforward judge him that hath a case at law, wage war with him that would wage war, rule him that would be ruled, keep alive him that should be kept alive, and pass the judgment that ought to be passed accordingly as men would be judged, and take the city to thyself and to thy seed after thee. And all the men of the city of Rome were well pleased, and they made Adrami king over them, and rejoiced in him with a great joy. And it happened thus by their will and by the will of God. And then a fever seized Balthazar, and thereupon he sent Adrami to the war and into everything that he wished, whilst he himself remained in the city. And after this Balthazar died, Adrami directed the kingdom, and the city of Rome became the possession of Adrami and the generations after him, for the will of God, and the whole kingdom of the world was given to the seed of Shem, and the slavery to the seed of Ham, and the handicrafts to the seed of Japhet. That's the Europeans. And now it talks about other kings. So what have we just learned? The Ethiopian church holds, according to their traditions, that Rome is a Jewish kingdom. You can't interpret anything else out of what I've just read to you. Oh, that's incredible. And suddenly we're seeing the link between Jupiter and the word Jew, even the word Jew, which is named after Ea in Egypt, obviously, as we've seen. So I hope you've enjoyed this video a lot, because we're starting to see the underlying Phoenician structure in the ancient world, in ancient Europe, and their influence and how the alphabet may have spread and become the Roman alphabet. All right, guys, hope you've really enjoyed this. Share it around. Cheers.